London, in the summer of 1666, the largest city in England falters, and almost every single building in it is made of wood. The streets are so narrow that upper floors touch above them. Wood, tar, thatch, and pitch packed wall to wall for miles. It has not rained properly for 10 months. The city is a woodpile that has been drying in the sun all summer. Along the river stand warehouses filled with everything a fire could dream of: tar, oil, brandy, gunpowder, and rope. Londoners know fire. Small ones break out constantly. The city has survived them all. That confidence is about to cost everything. The city is already wounded. The year before, plague killed 100,000 Londoners. Pudding Lane, a small street near the river. At its heart, a bakery that supplied ship's biscuit to the Navy. Around midnight on September the 2nd, the household went to bed. The baker would swear to his death that he raked the oven out. Somewhere in that oven, one ember disagreed. Around 1 in the morning, the kindling beside it began to smoke. The family woke to smoke filling the stairs. The ground floor was already gone. The foreigners escaped across the rooftops in their nightclothes. Their maid, too afraid of heights to follow, became the fire's first victim. On any calm night, it would have ended there, one house lost. But this night brought a hard, dry wind from the east. London's fire defense was leather buckets and hand squirts. Against a wind-driven fire, it was nothing at all.
The Lord Mayor was woken and brought to look. His verdict entered history. A woman, he said, could put it out. He went back to bed.
Within hours, the fire found the wharves fess and everything stored on them. Tar, oil, and brandy turned it into something no one had ever seen. The fire even attacked London Bridge itself, lined with houses like a street. Only a gap left by an earlier fire stopped it crossing the river. Across the city, a Navy clerk named Samuel Pepys watched from his window and began writing down everything. By Sunday morning, the diarist took a boat to see for himself fields, then went straight upriver to the palace to warn that the capital was dying.
The king gave the order the Lord Mayor had been afraid to give. Pull down houses.
Teams began tearing down houses ahead of the flames. But the fire, driven by the gale, was moving faster than men could demolish.
Now London moved. 100,000 people at once, carrying whatever they could, as the price of a cart rose 40-fold in a day.
People buried what they could not carry. Pepys dug a pit in his garden for his documents, his wine, and his Parmesan cheese.
The river became the highway of escape. Watermen made fortunes. Behind the boats, the entire waterfront burned as one.
London had over 100 churches inside its walls. Over the next 3 days, the fire would take 8 or 7 of them. The booksellers hauled their stock into the Cathedral crypt at the strongest stone building in London. Surely, they reasoned, stone cannot burn.
Old St. Paul's had stood for 600 years. Half of London now believed it would stand forever, and stacked their valuables inside.
By Monday night, the cathedral was a warehouse of everything London wanted to save. It was the worst decision of the entire fire. By Monday night, the fire was visible from 40 miles away. Diarists wrote that the light was bright enough to reach it. The fire grew so vast it began making its own wind, sucking air in at the streets and hurling flame at the sky. It no longer spread house to house. It leaped meat, throwing fire hundreds of meters ahead of itself. No demolition gap could outrun that.
The king stopped waiting for the city authorities. He put his brother in command, set up fire posts, and called in the Navy.
The Navy's answer was gunpowder. Not pulling houses down over hours, blowing them flat in seconds, whole streets at a time. It was brutal arithmetic. Destroy a street to save a district. For the first time in 3 days, men were moving faster than the fire. Witnesses wrote that the highest men in England stood in those bucket lines themselves, ankle deep in water. On Tuesday night, the fire reached St. Paul's. It climbed the repair scaffolding like a ladder that 6 centuries of faith had leaned against the wall. The roof was covered in 6 acres of lead. It melted and ran down the streets in glowing streams. Eyewitnesses said the very pavement burned. The heat burst the stones themselves. Everything stored inside, the books, the paintings, the fortunes of half the city, was gone by morning. On Wednesday, the thing no order could command finally happened. The east wind that had driven the fire for 3 days' truce died.
At the gunpowder gaps, the flames arrived and starved. Street by street, the fire that had eaten London ran out of London to eat.
The demolitions had saved the Tower too, and the hundreds of tons of official gunpowder stored inside it. London never learned how close that call was. 4 days of fire had erased 4/5 of the city, 13,000 houses, 87 churches, and the Cathedral of London. 100,000 people slept in the fields that week, and yet the recorded death toll was astonishingly small. Officially, fewer than 10. The king rode out to the camps himself, promising bread and rebuilding. He also crushed a rumor that could have turned London wanted a culprit. A French watchmaker confessed to starting the fire, a confession that was provably, physically impossible. They hanged him anyway. Only afterward did the ship's captain confirm. Hubert had still been at sea when Pudding Lane caught fire. Within days, Duvsmoot, a young architect, presented the king a plan for an entirely new London. Broad, stone, and rational. The grand plan died in weeks' code. Londoners rebuilt on their old plots, on the old street lines. But what they rebuilt was transformed.
New law, written in the fire's ash. Brick and stone only. Wider streets. No overhanging floors. The wooden city was outlawed forever.
The fire also invented something. Within years, London opened the world's first fire insurance offices, and the first private fire brigades to protect their clients.
10 years after the fire, most of the city stood again, in brick. Cleaner, wider, and far harder to burn. And on the hill where the old cathedral died, Wren got his masterpiece after all, a new St. Paul's.
The architect built, or rebuilt, 51 churches over the ashes. The city raised a column to the fire, 61 meters tall, the exact distance from its base to the bakery where the first spark was born. For a century and a half, the inscription blamed Catholic conspirators for the fire. The lie was only chiseled off in 1830. Pepys' diary survived him by centuries. Almost everything vivid we know about those 4 days, the buried cheese included, comes from its pages. Look at a map of London today. The towers are new, but the tangled streets beneath them are the same lines Londoners refuse to abandon.
Every organized fire brigade on Earth is, in a straight line of descent, a child of those 4 days.
311 steps up the monument, London's children still climb toward the gilded flames, mostly without knowing what the number 61 means. In the museum cases sit the fire's small survivors, a bucket that fought it, coins it melted into one.
And every morning, in 1,000 London bakeries, someone rakes out an oven at closing time and checks it twice.
A handful of streets escaped the fire and survive today, narrow enough to show exactly what all of London wants: one ember in one oven, one dry summer, one hard wind. History's greatest catastrophes rarely need more than that to begin. London burned in 4 days and answered in stone, law, and brick. The city you see today is the argument it won with the fire. Subscribe, Tome. The biggest stories in history start small enough to fit inside one oven.